Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program will begin shortly. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as a courtesy to your colleagues and today's presenters, please silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Thank you.
What's that? Hardworking ACRO president-elect has also joined the event management staff.
I'm good at that too.
Other duties as a sign.
All right, thank you all for bearing with us. I know we have some lunch things, but we don't have a critical speaker that needs to leave, and I just wanted to make sure some of our colleagues had time to arrive. Let's go ahead. I'm going to call the 104th ACRO Annual Business Meeting to order. That needs to be more resounding. So I'd like to start off with some of my remarks, and then I'll hand it to Executive Director Mike Riley after this. So if we could flip to the slides. So my remarks. First, I'd just like to start off with thank yous. And I'm going to be quick because we're going to go through a lot of stuff, and I'm going to talk a little bit faster, but then I'll slow down. So first, I'd like to thank my beautiful wife, Brianna, who was able to make the trip, and my two lovely daughters, Kate and Kelsey, for putting up with my absences and everything you have to do with ACRO leadership. Of course, I'd like to thank the University of Oregon for giving me the time, the people who mentored me in the past and allowed me to achieve this level of being involved at state, regional, and national levels. Herb Sherrick, Sue Evelyn, Julia Pomerank, our Vice President Roger Thompson, and of course, most importantly, my very capable staff, who without them being able to step in my absence wouldn't allow me to be able to be here. Also want to thank all of our ACRO board members, our committees, caucuses, and all of our members that make everything happen. And I can't forget our ACRO staff, who really put things into action and really make our ideas become reality. I want to mention the strategic framework, some of the things we'll just continue working on. And really, this is what I was talking with Corey Clark from Moorhead last night. And we're just talking about consistency and persistence. Everything in higher ed and many of our lives Everything you do can't just happen in the one-year tenure of a president of the board of directors. It's got to be all those people that have come before you and everyone after you. It has to be that persistence and consistency of vision in pushing forward. So that's where we look at the strategic framework. We look at student success, diversity, equity, access and inclusion, state and regional support for our folks out there, especially when times in state budgets and things get a little bit tougher. They need our help to continue the involvement at the national level. We have a lot of great folks out there that are getting involved, and this year we're having more possibilities for involvement and member engagement. These work groups and the very capable chairs and co-chairs are either forming their membership of very capable members of our association to be involved in this very important work. These folks are doing and tackling some areas in state and regional, records and registration management, very topical issues and timely societal issues, but also I'm very pleased to see that we've got two key factors involving a lot of our admissions colleagues. I'm really looking forward to their outcomes that'll help drive the policy and guidance that will be utilized at our institutions and also help frame some of the ways that they're going to be able to put those policies into action on the ground. Now, one of the things I talk about consistency and persistence is looking at, again, building on the shoulders of those who have come before you. So I know some of the colleagues in the past may have had to walk uphill both ways in the snow and blizzards. So hopefully we've left something where at least you only had to walk uphill one direction and it was just in the rain. So I'd like to even keep building a place where it's a flat, smooth path and people can enjoy sunnier days. But our opening speaker at our opening session, Francisco Marmolejo, brought up a lot of key trends and kind of a tidal wave of demographic change throughout the world that's really unavoidable, that will bring change no matter if we want to accept it or not. But we'll have to figure out ways to deal with it. So some of those pressures that are being brought to bear will go into a little bit of my past history as an officer in the Coast Guard and a little bit of the nautical thing. So now I promised some people that we're going to be a little bit fun. I'll go quick. I don't want to be up here too long. But I did promise some folks that we would have tropical islands, physics, and well-muscled, oiled, shirtless men. This may not be your typical business meeting president's remarks, but bear with me, it's all going to make sense. So in times of that pressure and those kind of changes and sea changes, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. A lot of us are going to have to face those things. It's easy for someone to step into a role, maybe not necessarily be a leader, but be a caretaker and just carry you forward. But it's that leader in all of us. It's time for leaders is now. I mean, heck, it's always the time for leaders. But sometimes in those difficult change times, those times where budgets are tight, resources, we need to be there for each other, and that's the time where you can be that rock in the middle of that tumultuous stream. So let's start here. So I found out I was going on a trip to Australia. Actually approaching from this direction through the South Pacific and Ecuador, the Galapagos Islands, Bora Bora, Tahiti. It was awesome. Lots of stories in here. We don't have time for all of them. So it wasn't your typical mode of transportation. It wasn't what do I do with myself on a 15-hour flight. It was on this vessel. So that was great. Pacific is a heck of a big place if you're going across, but this was an amazing time. So it was under sail, no engines, across most of the Pacific. Took 3 weeks. Didn't see another boat out there. Thought maybe we died and were doomed to sail the earth on a ghost ship. But then my mother, God rest her soul, had a very encyclopedic memory, and she said, oh my gosh, I think I've got a copy of National Geographic from March 1968. And I think it has a very relevant article, and you're going to want to go to this place if you have an opportunity. So that place was here in the minus 13 time zone, because the sun also always rises on this kingdom first. Does anybody even know we had a minus 13 time zone? So of course that kingdom, does anybody recognize this gentleman? It's not Mark McConaughey with a really good tan. So this is Pita Tafoa Tolufa. Tafoa Tolufa. He's from the kingdom of Tonga. So he achieved celebrity and fame with being the flag bearer for the kingdom of Tonga. He competed in judo And also, I didn't realize, but he did compete in cross-country skiing for the kingdom in the most recent Winter Olympics. So aside from having obvious extreme pride in his country, he also supports the coconut oil industry, obviously. Whoop. And he's done something that our executive director, Mike Riley, has yet to achieve. Apparently, he has caught a mahi-mahi. Mike hopes to get this good someday. So the kingdom, Nuku'alofa Tonga in the south is the capital. In the north of the island group of Vava'u. And up there is where my mom was sending me. But in between these two spots, also we stopped and recreated this. This is also where Fletcher Christensen decided to kick Captain Bligh off in a little dinghy and let him go on his solo excursion from HMS Bounty. So, and this one spot here is a place called Mariner's Cave, also referred to as the Princess Cave, when a princess's family was in a political squabble, which was going to result in the entire decimation of her family. Her lover decided to hide her in this underwater cave. Now, the kingdom has some beautiful diving. This is Swallows Cave, and as one of our rising senior students who probably ended up going to an institution of higher ed somewhere in the Chicago area, Ferris Bueller used to say, if you have the means, I highly recommend it. So Mariner's Cave has an approach where you can snorkel in, dive into this cave. And what's really cool about this cave, anybody in science, I'd love students to be able to see this, it has a change in pressure. So when you condense the atmosphere, things become clear. When you expand the pressure in a volume, it gets foggy. So it kind of goes like this. This is the interior of their cave, a really cool diving experience, and you can get there skin diving or scuba diving. But when the tidal surge goes out and the pressure lessens, things become cloudy. It goes to a thick fog. I have people sitting next to me that you can just see them disappear. You couldn't see your hand this far away. But then when the pressure comes back in, things become clear until eventually you're in a state of just clarity again. So I'm using this anecdote with a cave, the Mariner's Cave, Princess Cave, and the Kingdom, to look at sometimes with the pressures we face that are coming at us, sometimes if we have no pressure, we sort of wander in a fog of no sense of direction, resources scattered. And sometimes it's only in those pressure situations that we gain a sense of clarity. Things become distilled, and we have to make decisions based on those. So I think sometimes that pressure, if you stand alone, can crush you. But sometimes if you're together and you have friends and you have colleagues you can reach out to, that pressure can form a diamond. That pressure can be something that strengthens people. So going forward, again, oftentimes we are the steady force of the consistency, the persistence of order amidst chaos. So don't give in to the pressure, but go forward, rise up, move yourself from the cave, move yourself, your institutions, your students, and your colleagues forward with you. Now sometimes you can have stormy seas, inclement weather. Those will happen. And also, for my daughters, I decided to put these up here, always beware the bottom-feeding eels, and don't let them get you down. But for all my colleagues, you may encounter stormy weather. We're all here for each other. But as I depart, I will always wish you fair winds and following seas. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage our Executive Director, Mike Riley, who will tell you a lot about the initiatives and things we have in motion with the association. And then later, Jack will tell you about some pretty exciting things we'll be working on. Mike.
Thank you very much, Jim. A quick story. It has really been a pleasure working with Jim this year. My younger brother, who's a year younger than me, in Houston, Texas, is a pretty accomplished beer home brewer, and he's been doing it for many years, and his partner is a guy named Jimmy Page, not the guitarist from Led Zeppelin, but a guy named Jimmy Page, who I've known for this nearly 20 years as I've visited, and I only discovered about a year ago that he had been in the Coast Guard. And of course, I asked him, do you know Jim Bouse? Same class. I thought, of course. We tweeted off a picture, and Jim said, how do you know Jimmy Page? I just thought, small world, the guy does get around. We had a very busy year. I was going to say that some joke about quiet week in Lake Wobegon, but after last year's annual meeting opening, that was probably not apropos. One of the biggest changes for ACRO is that after renting at 1 DuPont Circle for more than 48 years, we have purchased our own space. You'll hear a good bit more from Jack on that. You know, we thought we weren't close enough to the action in Washington, D.C., so sometime this summer we're going to move about 4 blocks from the White House. We will own 2 floors in a newly constructed 9-story building. We'll take possession sometime in late April or early May, and then we have about 12 weeks of construction to build out the space. So if you plan to come to DC, be sure to stop by and see us. I'm going to talk about just some of the things that we've done over the last year. One of the big projects we've had is that we've implemented a new association management system. And I want to really thank the staff, our IT shop, all of the staff who have been working on this while we're trying to deliver the work of the association at the same time. It really you should start to see a much more engaging relationship with our system. And it's a Salesforce platform. We bit the bullet. Everybody's going to Salesforce. We're also going to be self-publishing our SEMQ journal. 5 years ago, we started this journal. We moved from SEMSource, which was a newsletter for a lot of years, and then we published with Wiley. But after 5 years, we just felt we could do a better job internally, and so we'll be self-publishing that journal, and you should see that sometime in April. We continue to produce publications that are of interest to the membership. Very excited to have the newest publication is Recruiting and Retaining a Diverse Student Body. Many of you were contributors to that book. It's kind of the first one that we've come out that's really closely aligned to the new core competencies and proficiencies, and you'll start to see that more as our publications come together. Over the past year, we also did the Registrar Self-Assessment, one of our more popular books, Mentorship in Higher Education, and SEM Core Concepts, too. So thank you to Martha Hennebree and her staff for putting that together. International Education Services. Oh, I didn't mean to go that back. A little over a year ago, we ended a 25-year history of doing individual credential evaluations for foreign students seeking to study in the United States, and really tried to focus more on professional development, research, training, and I think that's gone extremely well. We continue to evolve, and some of the highlights over the last year, we received a $120,000 grant from the Ford Foundation to partner with the University of California, Davis and the American University of Beirut to construct the Article 26 backpack. And this backpack will serve as a repository for refugees and other displaced peoples to recreate their educational history and build a better path to the future. ACRO has also recently conducted a delegation to Cuba. Has anybody raised their hand if you were part of the Cuba delegation? All right, we've got several of you in here. Thank you for that. I hope you should see much more over the coming months about that experience. We're also leading an inter-associational group looking at the new European privacy rules, GDPR. Thank you to Julia Finocchi for that work. The Advocacy Center. We have really stepped up in the last year our work in the public policy arena. The Director of Government Relations, William Gill. Bill, are you? Bill's right here. And his team have done a great job of building our presence on Capitol Hill. Among the many achievements that we have this year is getting our reverse transfer amendment into the House Higher Education Act reauthorization. And Bill and his team have created the new Advocacy Center, which is on the ACRO website. And it's a way to quickly help members contact their legislators on key issues impacting the profession. They are also working very closely with our recently reestablished Public Policy Advisory Group, who provide guidance to us on the impacts of policy on practice. The website. We thought while we're moving and doing a new AMS, why not redo the website at the same time? But we're moving away from a largely transactional site to one with more content-rich environment. And if you go by the ACRO booth, if you're interested in doing a little bit of a dive into the first model of the website, you can do that. It will be integrated with the new AMS and provide much better experience for our members. A couple of things in the works. We will have an online policy repository, a place for you to be able to go and look at policies and practices of other institutions. If you're pressed on your campus to rethink your grading policy, you'll be able to go and look at some examples, look at your repeat policies, that sort of thing. That's something people have been asking for some time. And we will also be bringing online self-assessment tools for the members of the profession, admissions officers, registrars, chief enrollment managers, to have an opportunity for you to do a little self-assessment, engage yourself against the core competencies and proficiencies to see where you are in your professional development. Ooh, I'm moved off here. I also want to just do a little bit of a shout out to our Lumina grant. Bear with me here a second. You know, after completing the work on our initial Lumina grant from the Lumina Foundation, a $1.6 million grant we completed in 2016, ACRO, in partnership with NASPA, our colleagues of Student Affairs, received a second grant for $1.2 million to continue the work. Under this project, we'll be doing a couple of things, helping to build the readiness for comprehensive learner records at 150 colleges and universities around the country. We'll be working with the Competency-Based Education Network, CBEN, to help develop learning records based on competencies, those schools that are not using grades, courses, or terms. The three primary elements of a transcript. So what's the new one going to look like? We have a group that will be facilitating the development of a white paper on the challenges and potential solutions for data integration. And we will be exploring ways to utilize the degree audit for building requirements based on learning outcomes. So thanks to Tom Green, Michelle Sandlin, and Nicole Spiro for their work on this effort. I also want to give a shout out to Dr. Wendy Kilgore, our Director of Research, as we continue to do more and more in the research realm. Thanks to all of you for responding to those 60-second surveys to help inform practice. Recently put out the career profile for registrars, I think the second edition of that. We did chief enrollment management officers in the fall, and we're working right now on a project with the University of Arizona on the issue of excess credit. In excess credit for graduation, as you know, a big concern in higher ed is the loss of credit for transfer students. So we're doing a project that we can hope to provide some insights into that. We've taken ACRO on the road this past year, bringing popular workshops to Denver and Chicago area, making it easier for members to have access to quality professional development. We will have more of these on the horizon in other parts of the country. So we look forward to another productive year, and thank you for providing us the opportunity to serve you and the association. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Now I'd like to introduce Jeff von Munkwitz-Smith, honorary member, retired assistant vice president and university registrar from Boston University, and past ACRO president as our parliamentarian for this morning. Thank you, Jeff. Now I'd like to remind you for two things we'll be voting on this morning will be the acceptance or adoption of the minutes from last year's meeting and also the budget, and Jack will propose both of these and bring these to the floor. But when voting, you should have in your name badge, and a couple people don't. But if you were a member, you probably pull your name out and turn around, write voting member on it, and then hold it up. So what I'll do when we have those votes, the way this goes, if you haven't participated before, and I'm glad you're here if you haven't done so, and I appreciate every voting member being here that is present, that when I call for a vote, and I'll ask for anyone in favor of the motion to please hold it up. And then I'll ask for anyone not in favor of the motion, please hold it up. And I'll ask for any abstentions, please hold it up. We'll do a rough count. If things look like they might be close on any sort of voting motion, we'll ask the members of the Nominations and Elections Committee to actually count, and each one is usually assigned a segment of the audience, and they'll physically count all the votes and make sure we've got an actual number counted. So that's how that's going to go. Now I'd like to call Nominations and Elections Chair Julia Pomerank from the 2017-2018 Nominations Committee and her Vice Chair, Jonathan Helm, to the stage.
Good morning. Julie and I want to provide a report of the Nominations and Elections Committee from this past year. And I want to begin by recognizing those that were part of that committee over the past year. In addition to Julia and I, you see the names listed there, but I'm going to ask those to stand, and we'll hold our applause and recognize them with applause at the end. So Tracy Jameson was our chair-elect this past year, and she's from the University System of Maryland. Rebecca Mathern was vice chair-elect from Oregon State University. Lynn Archer from Adventist University of Health Sciences. Linnell Hahn from Southeast Missouri State University. Andrew Hanna from the University of Chicago. Robert Hornberger from Missouri State University. Patty Matei from the University of Pittsburgh. And Paul Kyle served as our board rep, and he's from Johnson County Community College. And so, in addition to the list, this is a map that shows the states that were represented by the committee over the past year. You see the stars there representing the states that Julia and I are from. So a little bit about our process over the past year. Many of you are familiar with this. We did have 4 open board positions to be filled. So the goal was to nominate 2 folks for the ballot, and then 1 to be elected for each of the open positions. We also had, we needed to fill 7 positions on the Nominations and Elections Committee, and that's done by nominating 14 individuals, 7 of which are elected. So nominations were solicited right after the annual meeting through the end of July. We had some follow-up that our committee did with those that were nominated so they might complete their profiles and provide the information for us to be able to evaluate their nomination. And then in September, the Nominations and Elections Committee met in Washington, D.C. and looked through those members that were nominated and put forward a slate of nominees for voting. The voting ran from October 2nd through November 3rd, and the results were announced to the membership on November the 9th. So a little bit of data here. Wasn't a significant amount of variation from past years on most of the items you see in the rightmost column there, as far as the number of nominations, the number of nominees. 2 that I'll point out are the nominees who submitted activity reports for the Board of Directors. You do see a pretty substantial increase, about double the number of last year. But if you look 2 years back, it's very consistent with that number. And the change in number there, I think we would attribute mostly to the positions on the board that were open in this past year. The other numbers that I'll point out are the number of members who voted. You see a slight increase there. But based on the number of members that we have in the association, a slight decrease down to 4.8% of the members that voted in the election. I'm going to turn it over to Julia to share with you about the election results.
I'm happy to tell you again who you elected as your new board of director folks. So President Louisa Havens Gerardo from Virginia Tech University. Vice President for International Education Jennifer Mink from Texas A&M University. Vice President at Large Rhonda Kitch from North Dakota State University. And Vice President for Leadership and Management Development Jerry Montag from Northern Illinois University. And then let me remind you who you elected as the incoming Nominations and Elections Committee. A thing to note, which you know, is that the chair and vice chair serve as vice chair-elect and chair-elect the year before. And it's a great apprenticeship and a great way of keeping continuity among the Nominations and Elections Committee. So the chair coming in is Tracy Jameson from University System of Maryland. And please hold your applause. It's hard, but hold your applause till they're all up. Vice Chair Rebecca Mathern from Oregon State University. Chair-elect Tiffany Robertson from Governor State University. Vice Chair-elect Connie Shipman from Campbell University School of Law. Charlie Couch from the University of Northern Colorado. Susan Hamilton from Rutgers University. Richard Jimerson from University of Texas at Arlington. Rebecca Lothringer from University of North Texas, and John Papanchek from Carnegie Mellon University. And then there are also 3 alternates that are named to the committee. And I want to give a special thanks to those folks because they kind of stand in as our understudies and are needed if we need them, and not needed if we don't need them. But it's a great sort of guarantee that we'll have a full committee. So the alternates are Carol Harrison from the College of Southern Maryland, Kelly Brundage from University of West Florida, and Matt Schill from the University of Nebraska, Omaha. Thank you very much. And this is, again, a map of the US and Canada. And a great member from Mexico pointed out that we don't have the other countries of ACRO here. Certainly any member of ACRO can be elected to nominations and elections, can be elected to the board of directors. And so envision, if you will, the whole world, though here it's just the US and Canada. This shows you where the board members who will be sitting beyond this year are from. So again, a sense of the balance that the Nominations and Elections Committee works with, the balance that we hope we all work with as we prepare and encourage and nominate candidates to be in the pool for these leadership positions with ACRO. And so one of the balances we try to get, one of the pieces of diversity we try to get is across the country, across Canada, across the world. We also try certainly to have some balance and show the diversity among the gender, sexual preference, sexual diversity, what's the real word? Gender identity. Anyway, all of the differences among our members, and also among the institutions we represent, so 2-year, 4-year, public, private, small, large. Again, the rich diversity that is represented in our organization and that we aspire to in our organization, we want to represent that through all the layers and levels of ACRO. So certainly among the nominees for board of directors and for nominations and elections. So let me give you a little bit more information. This is the regional diversity that the Nominations and Elections Committee represents. So again, knowing that at all levels we would like regional diversity, diversity about all the identities that folks represent and that institutions represent. So let me end with giving you a little bit information about the timeline and some tips, ways that you can help in this process. Soon, by mid-April, the nominations will be open, and they'll be open through the end of July. And then the Nominations and Elections Committee will meet in mid-September. And the vote will happen among the membership from September through October. And then the results will be announced in early November. The ways that you can help in this process is to prepare others and to prepare yourself for leadership positions. It's great to know all the ways that you can prepare for a leadership position in ACRO by being active in your profession, active in your state and regional organizations, by being active in work groups, by presenting, by being on committees, all the ways that you can kind of build up that resume so that when a Nominations and Elections Committee looks at your information, they can say, oh my goodness, this person has a lot of experience with ACRO. This person is someone who's prepared to be a leader in this organization. Another thing I would say is that if you've gotten a nomination, please accept if you're able to. And then know that it might not be, the timing might not be quite right for you. It might be that you're delighted to think of a leadership position with ACRO, but it's not the right year because you're doing an upgrade to your student information system. Or it's not a right year because of family situation. But to know that it's a process where you can be nominated more than once. And I thank very much the people who accept multiple nominations. If you remember the diversity that we're looking for, the balance we're looking through across all of the ways that we identify and all the ways our institutions identify, you might be a fabulous, fabulous person. You probably are. You probably all are, right? But it might be that there are already 3 people from Nebraska, and as good as Nebraska is, we don't want a 4th board member from Nebraska at the same moment. And so I really thank people for the grace of accepting nominations and accepting that it's a pretty complex process of identifying the people for the ballot. And so if you're nominated, please say yes if you can. And if you're nominated more than once, please say yes if you can. When you're nominated, when you accept a nomination, please give us complete and full and timely profile information so that we know all the ways in which you're fabulous. And again, the plea to all of us is for us to help in all the ways we can to create a very robust pool of candidates that, again, represent all of the diversity that we have in our organization and that we aspire to in our organization. And being on the NNE is a great pleasure, so I thank you very much for the opportunity. Thanks. Yep.
Thank you all. And once again, I'd just like to offer thanks and congratulations. First, congratulations to the new incoming board members. Thank you. And thank you to our chair, Julia Pomerank, and our vice chair, Jonathan Helm, and their very capable Nominations and Elections Committee and the hard work that they all do in passing that torch on to the committee that will follow them. Thank you. Places, everyone. So, and it's my particular pleasure to be presenting this plaque to my boss.
Thank you very much.
And for the record, she had nothing to do with my nomination originally. She wasn't part of any of that, so. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you very much.
And then Mr. Jonathan Helm, who I first met at the last Registrar's Institute at Aspen in, hard to believe, 2003, 15 years ago.
You said you weren't going to say that part.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to welcome to the stage, because Jack's a lavalier guy.
So many of you know that also in my role as your Vice President of Finance, I also serve as Secretary for our board. So in that role, I bring to you the minutes from the 2017 business meeting. They were provided on the website. I know everybody looked at them, I'm sure. They come to you with a motion and a second from the Board of Directors.
I'd like to call a vote for the approval of the meeting minutes from last year's meeting as proposed by Vice President of Finance Jack Miner. All in favor, please raise your member voting card. Thank you. Any opposed? It's almost going to raise it as a demonstration. I can't vote twice. Any abstentions? Seeing none, the ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Yeah,
Right.
well, let's applaud them. Yeah, absolutely. So let's move into the finance and budget report a little bit. So this has been a very exciting year for us. Again, moving to a new building and making that part of our portfolio is a really important move for us. Will be really significant. I'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. From a foundation standpoint, though, I really want to make sure that everyone realizes the structure we have and some of the controls we have in place. So we have a standing audit committee that is made up of some members of the board of directors, but it's also made up of a member at large. So many of you know Ari Kaufman. Ari serves in that role for us and has for a couple of years. That's a great opportunity for us to get engagement from the membership, but also to make sure that we have the membership kind of keeping an eye of what we're doing and kind of how we're doing it as a board of directors. We received an unmodified or clean audit once again. I always try to remind people that when we're at this point in the year, kind of doing a conference in March, it's a little awkward because our financial year, our fiscal year runs October 1 through September 30th. So the finances that you actually get to look at deeply through the audit are what ended in September 30th of last year. And that was what that clean audit looks like. This was also shared in the email that I sent to the membership about a month ago. We'll talk a little bit more about the detail of that and kind of how the finances are important in some of the dollars as we move forward. One of the things I really want to spend some time on today, though, is really talking about our investment portfolio. Not too many years ago, so literally in probably 8 to 10 years at the most, the board of directors had the foresight to say, we want to be strong enough that we have money in the bank and we have investments, and we would love someday to have a $10 million investment or a $10 million investment portfolio. We reached that goal this year. So I want to congratulate all of you, and especially the former boards of directors, on how much that means for this organization and how important that is. So please join me in congratulating everybody. That portfolio is really a sign of the strength of the organization, the strength of the management, and again, much like what we do as an organization and much like the services we offer, it is really a point of pride for us and really an opportunity for us to show our partner organizations and our institutions how responsible we've been and how we've been able to be a benefit for our member institutions. Being at that $10 million mark was a really important landmark for us as an organization, but this year has also been an opportunity for us to think about what does that mean. We've been around for over 100 years, and for us, we felt like what that meant was we want to invest in property. So some of you have heard me say this before, that it's significant that your vice president of finance is the one that talks about the building over and over. Because it's not just the space that our staff does their work. It's not just something flashy that we wanted to do. It is an opportunity for us to diversify our investment portfolio. It is an opportunity for us to invest in something that will grow at a higher rate than our portfolio does now. And most importantly, it's an opportunity for us to stabilize our annual budget. One of the quirks about being in rented space, and it's just like being in a rented home, you don't have an opportunity to control what your expenses are. You don't know how much the rent will go up in 2 years, 5 years, 15 years, 20 years. You don't have control over the quality of the space. By moving to a space that we own, that we manage, we're able to control all of that. We're able to know that this is what our expenses for space will be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. And know that as we get to the end of that mortgage, we'll have an investment that has grown as we've continued to pay. So that's really important for us, and I'll talk about how that impacts our budget as we go along. When we look at the 2019 proposed budget, I always try to give folks a reference of kind of where we've been and where we are right now. So the first piece of that is the 2017 actual budget. And you'll notice that it looks like we're about $400,000 in the red, and I'll talk about how that's just an optical illusion in a second. When we look at the 2018 budget and the 2019 budget, you'll see that in both years, we plan to have a little bit more revenue over expenses, so we'll kind of clear a little bit more money. What we do with that, as many of you know, is we invest that back into our portfolio, and then we invest that back into our membership. Many of the things that Mike talked about of the member benefits are really opportunities where we've been able to leverage the funds that we have to provide services back to the organization. We've been able to minimize dues increases, and you'll see that as we move forward, especially as we stabilize the expenses around the building. That's an opportunity for us to be able to stabilize dues and also make an investment back into the membership. One of the things I always like to share is the trend of where we've been over the years. So you can see that we have kind of steady growth, but it also gives you an opportunity to see how this isn't a one-year game. And I think this year is a really important one for that. So when you look at the 2015 budget, it looks like we made about $1.8 million in revenue over expense that year. You may remember that we had a very large Lumina grant. That grant came in at the end of that fiscal year, and we've continued to spend that. So when you think about the shortfall we had this year, it wasn't really a shortfall, it was just us continuing to spend that Lumina grant from a couple of years ago. When you look at our normal operating expenses with the Lumina grant out, we actually increased our bottom line by about $500,000 last year. So again, doing really well. This year, we moved back to the model that is outlined in our bylaws. So a number of years ago, the organization had the foresight to build in a dues increase standard into our bylaws. So we'll do a CPI increase every year. That's voted on by the board and moved forward and just included in the budget package. You may remember that last year we did a larger increase, and the backstory of that was we hadn't done the CPI increase for a number of years. So we really philosophically wanted to move back to that standard. So it's kind of a small incremental growth over the years rather than hitting anybody with one big increase at a time. That ends up being about a $5 per membership increase. And since that's wrapped into the budget, it's not something this year that we need to vote on individually. So with that, we would move forward with voting on the budget. This again comes forward from the board of directors as a motion and a second, so it doesn't need those from the audience. And with that, I'll turn back to Jim.
First, I'd like to ask for any discussion. If there is, we do have microphones available. Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the fiscal year 2019 budget as proposed by Vice President Minor, please raise your voting cards. Thank you. Any in the negative? Any abstentions? Seeing and hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Jack.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone.
We have a budget, so no in risk of going into an ACRO office shutdown. Now I'd like to ask the Orlando co-chairs of volunteers, Igi Adoshagan and Kathy Zemba, to come forward. And their capable colleague, Diana Hall, could not be present, but please welcome them to the stage. I'd like to recognize their work. Miss Igi, please join me on. But Kathy, you can have Igi's. You guys can fight it out later who gets it. Okay. Thank you, Igi.
Thank you.
Kathy. Thank you. Now, could I please have your committee members please be stand and recognized for the Orlando volunteers being here present. Thank you very much. Of course, unfortunately, most of them are actually hardworking at the booth and making sure everyone's properly supplied with taffy. So girls, there's a lot of taffy over there. You got to get that on your way out. They're very happy about that. So that's, I ad-lib something here really quickly. It's the first time I've been able to bring my family to a conference. And the girls were, how do you not weigh 300 or 400 or 500 pounds by now? There's so much delicious food everywhere. And I said, it's kind of akin to a cruise ship oftentimes, so we have to restrain ourselves. Now I'd like to ask someone I've worked with for a while that she, her vice chair, and committee are responsible for the wonderful programming, the content, and everything that truly makes that professionalizes the body of work we do, that brings that knowledge together, and they're the reason you really come here to bring those things back home to better serve your students and your institutions. Please welcome to the stage Sarah Harris, our program chair, and her vice chair, Carrie Head. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Hey, Carrie. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Now, please hold your applause while I ask the other members of the program committee to stand. Sherry Walden Wells, Lamar University. Tammy Johnson, Marshall University. Kelly Brundage, University of West Florida. Christy Wold McCormick, University of Colorado, CU Boulder. Cassandra Moore, Anne Arundel Community College. Jonathan Helm, double duty, Baylor University. Last but not least, Rob Fitzgerald from Brown University. Please join me in congratulating them for their fantastic work. Now I'm just going to mention our official numbers for attendance, 1,826 for this meeting. I think we had about 160 plus members who were unable to make it, and sometimes I wonder if that's because of flights and everybody else and their brother coming down here for spring break and making travel a little difficult. But oftentimes the duties of our offices sometimes call us back too. I regret those colleagues were unable to join us, and I look forward to seeing them in Los Angeles. Now, kind of a bittersweet moment of recognizing the great work that some of our board members outgoing have done. Well, I shouldn't say some, all of them, but some of our board members are departing. First, and it's been a pleasure serving with him, and one of the reasons that I accepted that nominations and elections to put my name forward to be considered for a possible slate position was because I knew I would be following Paul Kyle from Johnson County Community College. Paul, please join me on stage. Thank you, Paul. As I'm kind of walking back there, I kind of feel like I'm doing the campus tour and like I'm waiting to do the back plant. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage Vice President outgoing for International, Jacqueline Elliott, Marion Military Institute.
Gonna miss you. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you so much.
If you ever find yourself in a very cold session or conference room and getting a little bit of a chill, Jackie's always famous for that. And I think that's one of the ways, she's very well adapted to doing the amount of consulting she does in Saudi Arabia, because she's the only one I know that's comfortable in 123-degree heat and doesn't sweat. I would be dying there. Next, I'd like to welcome to the stage the Registrar of the College of Dartmouth College, Meredith Braz. Miss you, Meredith. Thank you, Meredith. Last but not least, Scott Dittman, University Registrar of Washington Lee University, and also our inaugural Vice President at Large. Good to see you, sir. Yes. Yes. You've trained us well, Mark. Thank you, Scott. Now comes my own bittersweet time, but I'm very happy. And again, just talking about that persistence of effort, that consistency. And this is one of these things I just feel blessed as an association, as a board member, as a president, and soon to be past president, and joining those ranks, of having people again like Paul on one end. I'm looking at myself trying to hold up that standard. and just feel so blessed to have people like Tina following me and Louisa in line behind her and looking at that Nick's great colleague that just carries that work forward, because without them, it just doesn't happen. So you've just got to keep going like that. So please, I'd now like to present President's gavel to President-elect Faulkner. It's my great honor.
You get to keep the dang thing.
I get to keep one.
I wanted both of them.
Oh, yeah. We get the full Life Touch Hummerding treatment. Thank you, Tina. You're going to do a fantastic job.
Yeah, don't go away.
Just make sure she threatened to take my gavel from me.
I may still get it. Girls, we'll plan. So Jim, thank you for a fabulous year with us, and wow, this is heavy. You could hurt someone with this. So thank you, and on behalf of the board, we want to thank you so much for your service, and we get to go back over there and have another picture. Jim gets to
Tina, follow me.
angle it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
If only my building wasn't made of cinder blocks, some of these things would go on the wall.
It is heavy.
I can't get anything through the walls, and it's $400 to have facilities management come in and put a nail in. So it'll sit on my desk, I guess. So, thank you. Move this over here. And I don't trust technology. I use it, but I've had it fail too many times, so I'm with paper. So thank you, Jim, for your leadership this past year, and thank you to my fellow board members for your dedication to our organization and your willingness to look at how differently we can accomplish our work and our mission. And most importantly, thank you, fellow ACRO members, for the opportunity to serve you in a role I never anticipated doing. I'm truly honored and humbled to lead this organization that's been an essential part of the fabric of my professional life for 20 years. Although there's still lots of conference yet to come, I do hope you've already learned something new, reconnected with some longtime friends, made some new friends, and been reinvigorated about the work that we do. I know that I have. And at least three of the four last presidents have mentioned in their opening remarks that our script that's literally 130 some odd pages long, brief remarks with no definition of what brief means, and really no definition of what you're supposed to talk about. So I read it and went, So with the help of a creative and wise friend who knows, and this may come as a shock to those of you who don't know me, who knows that as an introvert, public speaking is one of my absolutely least favorite things. I think I'd rather go to the dentist, and I hate the dentist. So my first remarks consisted of this. We're gonna kill it this year, hold on tight, we have an exciting year on the horizon, peace out, and a mic drop. And then I was gonna leave. It sounds like I should have chosen that. But instead, you're going to get some thoughts from me. So here we go. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensely and think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of education." And although somewhat different, I believe these words also describe why we hold these kinds of meetings. Specifically, what we are doing what we want our students to do, expand our minds, look at problems in new and unique ways, and share our knowledge with others. We all hope and expect our campuses do the exact same thing. A recent closing speaker at my state and regional called it putting jelly or new jelly in our donut. I'm not entirely certain I get that, because I don't take the jelly out and want to put new jelly in, but I do think these meetings do keep us fresh. In the book, The Road to Character, by author David Brooks, he explores the concepts of resume virtues and eulogy virtues. And to quote him, "The resume virtues are the ones you list on your resume, the skills that you bring to the job market and that contribute to external success. The eulogy virtues are deeper. They're the virtues that get talked about at your funeral, the ones that exist at the core of your being, whether you are kind, brave, honest, or faithful, and what kind of relationships you've formed. Most of us would say that the eulogy virtues are more important than resume virtues, but I confess for long stretches of my life, I've spent more time thinking about the latter than the former. Our education system is certainly oriented around the resume virtues than the eulogy ones. And I can relate to David Brooks' comments. Sometimes eulogy virtues are also referred to as soft skills, or as Daniel Goleman coined it a fairly long time ago now, having emotional intelligence. Having soft skills does not mean being weak, unmotivated, or passive. Rather, it means either innate or developed ability to tap into understanding how our own feelings can inform and direct our interactions with others, thinking before acting, and working to identify with the needs of others around you. In short, intentionally working to be in community with those whom you direct and serve. You may not agree with the author on the eulogy virtues are more important than the resume ones, and I guess I could buy that argument as well. You need them both. Resume virtues are a necessary part of what we do and provide the underpinning for being the professionals that we are. Shout out to my FERPA dorks like me. Without an understanding of FERPA, yes, thank you, Helen, which is certainly a resume virtue, we could wind up in some fairly litigious situations. So resume virtues have their place as well. I see both the resume and the eulogy virtues as part and parcel of our professional development. Focusing on one while ignoring the other can lead us to be stunted or unidimensional. To help illustrate what I mean, I'm going to use a gardening example. For those of you who don't know, I am a Master Gardener, which is a program that's offered through extension offices at land-grant institutions throughout the country. From a plant perspective, if you only apply fertilizer without ensuring the plants have good soil, they might shoot up really quickly and grow very tall, but for optimal growth and health, plants need proper soil, proper nutrients, soil structure for air and water flow, and beneficial soil microbes. Our professional selves benefit for both of those as well. I think, as long as this doesn't sound disgusting to people, we at ACRO are like compost. We are building that solid substrate for us to grow. As we learn and share with each other, we are helping to build our professional substrate. ACRO offers many ways to develop both your resume skills or virtues and eulogy virtues. With the development of our professional competencies, ACRO is focusing additional resources on providing tools, education, and training so our members, us, have the skills to meet the ever-changing world in which we work. These are being and will continue to be developed by and with our membership, you and us. The staff in the ACRO office are second to none, and I do hope, although I can't see you all from up here, it's too bright. I see Melanie and Mike. I totally mean this from the bottom of my heart. You all are second to none, but they don't do our work. They need our experience and proficiencies to deliver sound professional development for all of us, not just here at the annual meeting or at other meetings, but in ways that reach more of our members. And that's where the eulogy virtues come in. Give of your time, your talents, and expertise to help others in the profession. Encourage those around you to do the same. And as you've heard several times, say yes to sharing and helping. I am a cautious person by nature. I drive the speed limit, much to the frustration of those in my car and those around me. Yes, I stop at stop signs when riding my bike. I actually read much, if not all, of the terms and conditions on software, hotel rooms, credit cards before signing them. I had a person at a hotel say, "I've never had anyone actually read that. I want to know what I'm signing." I make lists for what I'm going to accomplish on the weekend, including a rough timeline of when I need to get up and be at various locations to minimize wasted time. This will make you laugh even more. Sometimes I even add things to the list that I've already accomplished so I can cross them off. And I tell you this not to make you think, wow, I'm glad I'm not her, and I'm also really glad I'm not married to her. But I do want to underscore how differently I approach professional and personal development. There is absolutely no right time or place to embark on growing and developing professionally or personally. There's always one more thing to do, to learn, to finish, to accomplish, to read, to practice before you jump in. If I waited until I was completely sure and ready, had my list done and crossed everything off, I would absolutely never take the leap. Say yes, take the chance. You won't be alone. There are people who can and will help you. For the past few years, the board of directors, you've heard this from Jim and you've heard it from a few other people, has been working on identifying and codifying measurable deliverables for the ACRO strategic plan. As a board, we are committed to having the strategic plan guide where and how ACRO expends resources, be those financial, human capital, or otherwise. We continue to make strides forward in our diversity, access, and inclusion efforts. And as many of you know, or I hope all of you know, this work is never done. It's not a one and done effort. It will and needs to be ongoing. As always, we will look to you for your suggestions and ideas. We have several work groups that are running concurrently, and we are drawing upon the collective wisdom and experience of the membership to address pressing topics associated with the strategic plan. A couple of examples, although you've heard a few of them. We have one working on student identity issues, one examining the concept of student success, what that looks like and feels like for us, and one focus on successful running of a state and regional association. I'm confident that we will continue to form additional work groups to address these pressing issues and new ones as they arise. You're going to hear it again. If the call goes out to participate and you have the time and the expertise, please say yes. Submit your application. We need your voice. I will be challenging the board and the ACRO office to continue to build on the foundation established by this and former boards. We need to continually seek new ways to engage members and provide them tools to excel in their work. The exact shape of these tools may evolve, but you have spoken and we've heard, and you and we need this. So in the last 2 years, both Jim and Paul mentioned in their opening remarks the long-lasting impact of those who have supported their own professional growth and evolution. Many of us in this room have benefited from the generous spirit of other ACRO members, and I ask you now to pay it forward to others new to the profession and those new to the ACRO family. Paying it forward can also take many different forms, but all are important and can have profound impacts on those around you. You can fundamentally shape people's career paths, their approach to work, and those they work with, and what they believe they are capable of doing. Don't underestimate your role in shaping the future of our profession and this association. Thank you for your faith in me and the other members of the board of directors. We are here to serve you. Please don't hesitate to contact us with your concerns, hopes, dreams, complaints, or ideas for ACRO. And remember, as A.A. Milne, the creator of Winnie the Pooh, wrote, Pooh to Piglet, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce the 1819 Board of Directors. I get to introduce myself. I am Tina Faulkner. I am the Director of the Office of Student Finance at the University of Minnesota. Coming in as our president-elect is Luisa Havens Gerardo. She is the Vice Provost of Enrollment Management at Virginia Tech. Our past president needs no introduction, but it's in the script, so I shall do it. I follow directions. Jim Baus, ACRO past president and director of Enrollment Management Technology at the University of Oregon. Tiffany with a Y Robinson, ACRO vice president for Access and Equity, University registrar at Western Kentucky University. Tammy Agard, ACRO vice president for Admissions and Enrollment Management and associate vice president for Enrollment Management at the University of Florida. Go Baby Gators. Baby Gators. Jack Miner, vice president for Finance and University Registrar and Executive Director at The Ohio State University. Mark McConaughey, ACRO Vice President for Information Technology and Associate Vice Provost and Registrar at Indiana University, Bloomington. Jennifer Mink, you're the next lucky contestant as the ACRO Vice President for International Education and Associate Director of Admissions at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. Jerry Montag, Vice President for Leadership and Management Development and Director/Registrar at Northern Illinois University. Laura Medley, Vice President for Records and Academic Services and Registrar at Colorado School of Mines. Jackie Carter, ACRO Vice President at Large and Registrar and Student Affairs Advisor at Washington University in St. Louis. And last but not least, Rhonda Kitch, ACRO Vice President at Large and Registrar at North Dakota State University. And now we're going to go from one coast to the next coast. I would like to bring up to this stage the co-chair of volunteers for the 2019 meeting in Los Angeles, Bob Morley from the University of Southern California, and Matt Bemis from the University of Southern California. Come on up.
All right, I'm Bob Morley.
I'm Matt Bemis.
Now, I'd like to tell you, this is going to be very brief. Believe me, very brief. What you're about to witness is the product of endless discussion, back and forth, effort, preparation, rehearsal, and that would be a lie.
We found out about this at 9:30 today.
So Jenny Barnett asked me what we're going to do, and I said, oh, yeah. Well, don't worry, Matt and I are meeting at 10 o'clock. We'll put something together. So we've put something together. Just indicative of the immense planning we did, we were supposed to have a theme, and we were talking on the phone. Thank you, Matt. And of course, we got off on a tangent. We started talking about our favorite movies. Then we started talking about The Big Lebowski. And said, oh yeah, they had really cool bowling shirts. So I said, yeah, let's get bowling shirts. It has no relevance here, but we liked it. So that's why we're wearing it.
I was going for the theme of congestion, because all of you will experience a bit of that when you land in LAX. And by the way, do you know why they call the 405 the 405? Because you're going to go 4 or 5 miles an hour.
So without further ado, before we get to some quick remarks,
let's cue the sizzle reel. All right, isn't that cool? So I have a couple of remarks regarding co-chair volunteers. I'm actually a substitute co-chair volunteer here. My colleague Valerie Sass, who couldn't make the conference, will be taking over these responsibilities immediately when I get back to campus. So absolutely. But I do want to be, I also want to apologize for any of you who've walked by the ACRO 2019 booth, because if you've come within 10 feet, you know I've asked you if you're attending, and I have your business cards. So thank you for those of you who've cooperated. So it's very important that we have volunteers to make sure all of the activities that are necessary are carried off without a hitch. So thank you again if you've stepped up. And if not, we have more C's lollipops on the way. I'm told Janie has a stash she's been keeping to herself that we're going to get and put out on the booth. So do come by. I will tell you right now, the weather we can almost guarantee will be in mid-70s, bright and sunny. And so wherever you're traveling from, whether it be too hot or too cold, we promise for a perfect day for you and perfect conference for you. The hotel is the JW Marriott. It's a fabulous hotel. Unlike this hotel, it's not quite a mile between your room and the conference center, but it is outside. So you will be walking out in sunshine and lovely weather, and but it's a lovely facility. If you haven't been to the Los Angeles Live area, it's quite a treat. Chinatown's nearby. I will tell you, if you are renting a car, I would probably recommend renting a helicopter or doing Uber, because once you get there, you're going to want to know traffic is legendary, and you'll experience that. So, Bob, what else do we want to share?
Well, now that we told them how bad traffic is, the important things is it's going to be March 31st to April 3rd. It's going to be spring break for a lot of kids, I'm assured. Easter is April 21st, so we've got a lot of room between that. In years past, we've been covering that. As Matt said, we're going to be in the LA Convention Center. Next to it is Staples Center. Next to it is LA Live. Next to it is the Marriott Hotel. And as Matt said, the distance from the Marriott to the Convention Center is less than it is here, so don't be put off. There's 3 other great hotels nearby. And there's lots of activities. I mean, as I mentioned, the Staples Center, Lakers, Clippers, Kings, and then Dodgers are opening up that weekend, although it's hard to get tickets. I drive by, USC is about 3200 South Figueroa, and this is about 2000 South Figueroa. I drive by this every single night. I can tell you the building, and if you haven't been there in 2 or 3 years, you won't recognize it. It's so different. It has really been energized. In fact, the woman at our booth, Brandy Thigpen from LA Convention Bureau, said there are 150 active building projects, either renovations or brand new, going on in the downtown area. And I can tell you, because I drive through downtown every single day, there's a lot going on. I just think that LA is a good place to be right now. You know, as Matt said, weather's going to be fine. And we are, of course, looking for volunteers. And if you need something to say, I need to be in LA, use that as a crutch. And with that, anything else?
Yeah, and we have some cool things planned, although we're not the planners. We're going to have a red carpet area coming into the exhibitors booth, so we're going to ask some of you to, Jim Bouse, put on your best studs and come through. We'll have paparazzi there to take photos of you and other cool things planned. But we are looking forward to welcoming you to our small village of Los Angeles and where we live and thrive. So thank you very much. Oh, by the way, for those of you who volunteer, we're going to raffle off this retro poster. This is Getty Center quality. So that's a reason to volunteer. We have 2 or 3 of these. I actually tried to lay claim to one of these, and I was told, no, they're coming with us to Los Angeles. But any of you who volunteer, you may go home with one of these. Thanks much.
Thank you so much for enticing us to come to Los Angeles. So does the actual co-chair get the bowling shirt, or are you keeping it? I have another one for her. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be fighting. So thank you all. Thank you for joining us at the business meeting. And I do want to encourage you to join us next year in Los Angeles. Carrie has assured me we will have a kick-in program with lots of different ideas to invigorate you. If you want to go with the jelly and the donut business, go with that. But I'm so excited that you all joined us here, and I don't think I even have to use this thing. I adjourn the business meeting. You are adjourned. Go forth and play.